For the longest time, I woke up each morning feeling guilty about everything. Work, husband, daughter A, daughter B, stuff, the community. She couldn't make the parents' meeting, whatever. Finally, one day, she said, I got to give up on my guilt. I got to just leave the guilt and forgive myself for making some of the choices and work to figure out how I can have the self-satisfaction knowing I can be the best to be at what I want to be. So, okay, her husband decides he's going to take a career decision, and he becomes a consultant, and they move to a new area, which opens up her opportunities greatly. Their daughters start to undertake different tasks. Mom defines the roles differently. You have got to do that for yourselves. Or somebody else is going to do it for you. Then you're going to feel guilty. Or you'll have some audience beating you over the head saying, why don't you have kids? Or why aren't you going to the parent-teachers effectiveness class? Or whatever. You have to control it. So, challenges. Now for the real fun part. Gandhi. Remember, I told you he's one of my inspirational players. I want you to just think about this. I have a mic on. I'm in this room, and I have this ability to actually project. Here's a man who literally could muster hundreds of thousands of people, and there weren't 10,000 that could hear what the hell he was saying, and they were following him. Around the country, going for independence, submitting to cruelty, physical harm. What actually inspired him to essentially become the servant leader? He was the change that he wanted the world to be. So I invite you to be the change you want the world to be, especially as it relates to the opportunities that exist or don't, but should, for women of all ages in all countries. So I told you earlier, we did this study. I can't give you the whole study, but I sort of summarized some of the points. But here's Global Top 20 in terms of focus on leadership. Two interesting points. Top bullet, leaders spend greater than 30% of the time on talent. And bottom bullet, leaders are held accountable for standard leadership metrics, including diversity. By the way, if you are a diverse firm, chances are pretty good your financial results are better than firms in your space that aren't diverse. In fact, chances are not only pretty good, they're empirically proven to be better. On average, 15 to 20%. Interesting. Why is that? Frankly, because the whole is better than half. Interesting. By the way, diversity cuts both ways. I have, as I mentioned, 3 girls. I have a young daughter, 16. How many of you experienced mean girl behavior when you were 16? Raise your hands, come on. Pretty much everybody. So, as the father of 3 girls, I decided that they were much harder in their teens than boys. Because frankly, my son would just haul off and hit somebody, or he'd get hit, and it'd be done. Young women do with words and relationships to other women what men do or boys do physically, except it's emotionally charged and more damaging. And if you have any doubts about it, I invite you to just Google relational aggression. Relational aggression. And this book is an interesting book because it's about the queen bees, middle bees, and the victim to bees. And what it tells you, by the way, along with a whole bunch of other books, that what we thought was a teen behavior is existing in and out of the workplace today. Today. Wrong answer. Not acceptable at all. How many of you have a mentor? Raise your hands. How many of you have a female mentor? Far fewer. Interesting. How many of you mentor? Okay, we're going to have fun with this one. So, my challenge of Christine and Sharon a couple weeks ago when we met for coffee at Starbucks was, so let me get this right. You want me, a male, to engender the workforce. Great. Wrong answer. So I'm going to tell you a story, the story I told them. So at Dell, I was in a position of influence. I hired a lot of people. I actually hired in an African-American kid out of Atlanta to come in and be a player in the finance community. Wonderful guy, very smart, very talented, attractive wife, young kids, great family guy, good values. Within a year, I promoted him. He's in charge of a lot of people. A lot of pressure for promoting African Americans. I said, so I just have one question. Are the people that you promoted, and you promoted, I think, 5 or 6 people, just say 6, at least as qualified or more qualified than the people they were competing against? Absolutely. I said, well, okay, so what's the problem? He said, well, I'm getting a lot of pressure. I said, from whom? Well, some of my peers. They'd be white, right? Yeah. I said, so have them come talk to me if you want, but you can deal with this. I said, here's the point, Richard. I hired you because you were the most qualified. I promoted you because you were at least as qualified as anybody else I could think of, and in my opinion, more. You now are engendering a workforce that looks like you. If you want me to essentially help you, you need to lead me. You're doing exactly what I want. And if you don't, how do you expect me to? Because you're the one that's the line job. You're the manager. So you women, you want me to help you? Hire other women. Promote other women. Sponsor other women. And I'm going to come back to sponsor in a minute. Engender the workforce in your image, and I'll help you. I will follow. I will be your servant leader. And there's a lot of men just like me. A lot. You just have to show up. So mentorship versus sponsorship. Here's the deal. I have a lot of people that ask me to mentor them. I am not scalable. You're not either. So therefore, you can't mentor more than a few people effectively. But you can sponsor. So what do I mean by sponsor? I mean you take the time to actually know who some of the key players are, the key talent in your organizations, and you get to know them. Not because you're going to become their mentor. You just are aware of who they are, what their talents are, what their skills are, what their developmental needs are, and then you help them at any moment in time. And when the job comes up, you actually sponsor them. I know several people who are mentors that don't sponsor. Wrong answer. Why bother? It's like having a latte that's essentially decaf and non-fat. Why bother?